Ahoy and welcome back once again to the channel. For those of you new here, my name's Gary. I like watches. If you're here watching this, you probably like watches too. If you don't, well, stick around. You never know. You might like watches by the end of the video. I've got a pretty interesting watch to show you in today's video. Could this be the first luxury watch available to buy on AliExpress? That's how this watch is being marketed, and I guess in today's video we're going to find out, and we're going to take a proper good close look at this watch to see if it holds up under scrutiny under my macro lens, but also the dial's pretty special. It's a lacquered dial, and by all accounts those are pretty complicated, time consuming and expensive to make. Let me talk about the dial first, because really it is the dial that drew me towards this watch. It popped up in my AliExpress feed and I just thought, wow, that looks pretty cool. Don't think I've ever seen a dial that looks like that, and it's because it's a lacquered dial. There's 7 steps in the process to making a lacquered dial, and some of those steps have to be repeated many times, up to 7 or 8 times, to get this really cool sort of effect. At the moment there's 2 color versions available, this one and a green one, and because they're handmade lacquered dials, no 2 dials are the same, so you will be getting a very original, well, dial at least. Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? The only downside to lacquered dials is, well, it's going to push up the price, and it has pushed the price of this watch quite high. You are going to be paying through the nose for a watch like this with a lacquered dial. The failure rate's pretty high as well, and so that in combination with the man hours that goes into making these dials, yeah, it just means you're not going to be able to pick these watches up for the traditional sort of AliExpress prices, $150, $200. So these watches aren't going to sell in massive numbers, but I suspect they're okay with that. And if the rest of the watch is good, then yeah, they might actually represent good value for money, because I have reviewed sort of similar watches in the past from China with porcelain dials, and they've been significantly more expensive than this watch. So let me run through some of the specifications. This one contains a PT5000. It's also available with an SW200, although that is, again, just going to push the price up even more. It's a tough one really, isn't it? Because at the moment this watch with the PT5000 is available for just under $500, and so if you're interested in this watch, you might actually think it's worth spending the extra money to get a proper SW200 in this watch. Sapphire crystal front and back. The front crystal, a very nice piece of double domed sapphire crystal, a big piece of crystal as well. Nice strap, reminds me a little bit of Vario straps this. Beautiful buckle, really nicely finished, a mix of brushing and polishing on the buckle. The case back, display case back, custom rotor as well, which is pretty cool. Really nice case back. The brushing's quite strong. You've got some specifications there. It's screwed down. The brushing and the finishing on the case back seems really nice, and as you can see there on the case back, they're individually numbered, so they're not producing these watches in massive numbers. Only 50 meters of water resistance, but I think that's fine for a watch like this. The crown is a pull push crown. It's a sort of onion crown. It's not too big, seems to be nicely finished. And when I first unboxed this watch, the dial is obviously the first thing I noticed. It's really the feature that makes this watch stand out, but I have to say, to the naked eye, the case finishing looked pretty good. I like the case. Big, bold, curved bezel, some curvature on the case as well. It's like those lugs have hips. Brushing on top of the lugs, so you do have a mix of brushing and polishing, although there is a lot of polishing, and I'm already starting to get scratches on the polished surfaces. It's inevitable. Steel is actually quite soft and it does scratch up pretty easy, so, and I suspect this watch is going to be quite susceptible to that because of those big, bold, curved, polished surfaces, but they look nice. Now weirdly, they've put some loom on the dial, but no loom on the hands, so I don't know how useful that loom is unless it's bright enough to illuminate the whole watch dial so that you can then see the hands, which I don't think it is. The loom isn't fantastic. I have filmed the loom degradation clip, which you'll see at the end of the video. Yeah, that's left me scratching my head, that. Yeah. And something else that's left me scratching my head a little bit, and I guess a little bit disappointed, is the state of the hour and the minute hands. I don't know if this is intentional. I don't think it is, but when I zoomed in with my macro lens, there seemed to be this sort of pattern. I say pattern, it's not really a pattern, is it? It's sort of hazing or crazing. I don't know how you would explain it. It almost looks like cracking down the center of both of those hands. It's not on the second's hand. It doesn't look great, does it? And it prompted me to take the watch outside to have a proper good look at the hands and the case, actually. I zoomed into the lugs, and I was a little bit disappointed with the brushed finish on top of the lugs. It doesn't quite reach the corner of the lugs, that outer corner. I think that needs to be a little bit better. But yeah, when I saw those two things under my macro lens, I thought, well, let's take the watch outside and see how much they actually impact the watch when you're looking at it, you know, at sort of arm's length or at the sort of distance it would be if it was on your wrist. I don't think it's impacting the look of the watch, but I don't think it's quite good enough, especially for a watch that's being marketed as a luxury watch. Outside, you don't see the brushing on top of the lugs fall short, and you don't see that hazing or cracking on the hands. The hands still look bright enough, don't they? But, well, you know me, I like to zoom into these watches to have a look at the quality, and yeah, I think it's really important to have a look at these watches under a macro lens to see just how well made they are, and I think this one could be better. The rest of the finishing seems nice enough. The polished surfaces look nice and bright. The brushing on top of the lugs does seem to be nicely done. It's very satin-like and consistent. The movement on my time grapher is running very, very nicely. So on my wrist, the watch still looks good, and that dial is still really, really cool, really interesting, really different, but I still can't help but feel a little bit disappointed with, yeah, the brushing and the hands. I think you have to really like these dials to be prepared to pay just short of $500 for this watch. Guys, let me know what you think. Yeah, as always, a massive thank you from me to you for watching. It was good to get this watch in and put it under the macro lens. Now it's your turn to let me know what you think of this watch and the video, of course, in my comments section. As always, guys, have a good week.